Welcome, everyone, to the second open poll discussion from the pretentious assets of cinema. Focus on Father, Son, and the House of Mouse, and how Disney has been treating their audience, their staff, and the entirety of the streaming wars. Haha. But of course, this episode is hosted by Darryl Ayles, joined by his lovely fiancee Jamar, and his good friend Tad Brock is joining along the lines, and I can't do this anymore because it hurts my voice. Haha.
Well, thank God that it hurt your voice. I could not go through a whole episode of that.
Yeah,
I mean, A for effort, definitely. But yeah, welcome.
It's not that bad.
Cool.
Yeah, just
Would
get
you
him out of the
grind
way
my
early.
ears and fuck my butt?
Did you guys ever see that video of Goofy in court, and it's like this stupid
Yes.
animated thing?
Oh my god.
He's like, oh, I got him. I killed
Oh
him.
yeah, and I'm gonna fucking do it again.
again.
It's so good.
Well, it
Fucking
wouldn't
pink guy.
be a fucking Thursdays After Dark if it wasn't wild right from the get-go. So
Exactly.
yeah,
It wouldn't
welcome,
be a
everyone.
Thursdays with Moire episode if we record on literally any other day. It's the Thursday.
Yeah, I just gave up now. No matter the day, it's Thursday now. Whenever we're
It's that day with Maury.
That day with Maury.
Someday.
So yeah.
Like, chill out, motherfucker. It's just another Thursday for us. Fucking
Right.
Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I like it. Already surpassed our swear word quota from the last episode, so I love it. Okay, so how's everyone doing? It's me, Darryl. Welcome back. This one is a soft spot for me, and I think you'll understand why by the end of this episode. But to just kind of give, some cliff notes, basically, since The Force Awakens came out in 2015, whenever it did, I always felt like December was a month where Disney kind of really dug its heels in. There's always a big swing from Disney coming around the holidays, and yeah, so why not talk about it for this month's little panel? But yeah, pretty much I am very not for Disney. I don't know.
Say.
For a while now, I've been basically ever since I took filmmaking a bit more seriously, I started to look a bit more into the behind the scenes nature and follow the movie news and kind of, what's going on with studios, with releases, with how ticket prices work and how portions work. Things like that became very interesting to me. So I'll also cite that a little show called Charts with Dan on YouTube has been a huge influence for me to get a lot of the knowledge that I'm going to pull out of my ass tonight. He does a great job breaking down all of this crazy stuff. So if you like that, maybe check that out too. But to start off, when Disney and Fox joined together, I think that's when this all kind of became a thorn in my side. And just the very notion of it was like pushing into a monopoly area that's very dangerous, to the point that it was, a couple years before it was even allowed to fully be completed, just because of the amount of litigation surrounding such a large purchase. Like, it's also pretty wild that it went through in retrospect, but regardless, here we are many years later, and we're in the wake of Disney, so we're just gonna sit down and powwow about that tonight. Yeah, that's pretty much my little intro for you guys. Fucking let the leashes be off again.
The gloves are off. The leashes are undone. The fucking collars are anyway.
Well,
Right, the
where do
boxing
we
ring,
even
the
start?
little bell has gone. Ding ding.
yeah, I was gonna say, Tad, do you want to kind of explain your side of it?
Yeah,
Take the floor
totally.
first, because you're a Disney stan.
Get
Go
him!
for it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably the most Disney simp in this fucking panel right now, and even then, like, that's a bit of an overstatement. Like, you've definitely made some very good points that made me like rethink my whole stance on it, because I know you said before, like, I used to love Disney. Disney was always kind of like a huge part of my childhood. It was a huge part of my upbringing. I pretty much grew up on the animated films. My parents were fucking married at Disneyland. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Possibly conceived at Disneyland.
yeah. Daryl's convinced I was conceived at Disneyland.
It's
That
my
explains a
favorite
lot.
thing. I just-
So yeah, like, Disney's always been kind of like a soft spot for me, and there's always had that nostalgia, and like, it's gotten to the point where because I've done a little bit more research in the later years, like, yes, 100%, I agree, Disney is an evil corporation. But at the same time, like, every corporation is evil. Like, it's kind of hard to be like, I don't know. I have like a more love-hate relationship with them now. I still think they're not as bad as they could be, and I definitely think they could be worse. I still think there's plenty of other big studios out there that are worse in many ways. But yeah, like as of right now, when it comes to Disney, I'm indifferent to them. I still watch their content, and I still have a Disney Plus subscription. But yeah, lately, I think within the last, like, I'd say maybe 10 years, I think their quality has dropped significantly. They just, as a company, they just don't have any balls anymore, and yeah, that kind of upsets me. Because, like, if you go back in time, like, Disney was like the innovator, right? Like, we would not have animated films today if it wasn't for Disney pushing the envelope and pushing that medium.
We wouldn't have
Yeah, if
3D
now-
Disney
animated
didn't
films today.
steal. Yeah, exactly. But if Disney didn't steal a lot of that early stuff, let's put an asterisk on that, because in the last few years, it's been, there's some claims of fraudulent behavior in those early days, and saying he's the first animated film when there's already been 3 or 4. But you
It's
got
the
to make a
first
brand,
popular
and
animated film.
yeah,
there-
exactly. And I'll say the branding of him in those early days, spot on. They tried to keep it really clean. They did, besides the land purchase kind of stuff going on with Disney Worlds and whatnot, and how that tax-free kind of weird stuff. They kept it mainly straight. But yeah, I agree with you, Tad. The last few years, last decade or so, really is what I think we're going to be scrutinizing the most, because the lead up to it was just
Sorry.
it was a
I think
bouncing.
for me, it's the live action remakes. They just
Oh.
fucking piss me
Ugh. Well,
and like
some people
it's
say
just
like
such a perfect representation of Disney then and Disney now. Like, you look at like the old movies that they're remaking, and like Disney had fucking balls. Like Pinocchio, when that guy turns into a donkey, it's like one of the most nightmare fueled
yeah,
fucking
they straight up
imageries
give
that you
kids
ever see.
cigarettes.
Yep,
in
kids
the
Yeah, they
original.
had like
drinking.
kids having cigarettes and beer and shit. Like, they had fucking balls. And like now you just look at like the remakes, and it's all like, well, we gotta be woke. We gotta be
It's gotta be root beer instead of beer.
Well,
yeah, we
Don't
can't
lean
have the
into woke
kids
so
be all
early.
naughty and stuff, and every protagonist that we have has to be fucking perfect, and there's no flaws whatsoever. It's just, yeah, it's just not the same company it was.
It's
Well-
hyper sterilized, and I think a lot of it is. Wait. I should say, Devin, should we give you a moment? Do you want to? You
Oh,
love
yes,
playing devil's
please.
advocate. Do you want to
Well,
defend the live action remakes before
No,
we go on?
please don't.
I would just wanted to point out perhaps some logical fallacies. So you were claiming that, yeah, Disney's an evil corporation, but you're indifferent. Well, and then you're also saying that, well, every corporation is evil. And my question is, if every corporation is evil, are any of them?
Oh,
Yes.
asking the big
Okay, that's
questions.
some heavy stuff right off the get.
The answer
I
is
mean,
yes.
yes, yeah.
The answer is yes. Like in Brazil, like every corporation in that movie is evil, but they're evil corporations. It doesn't matter that every corporation in that like
No,
is
I'm
evil.
taking this
And I'm not.
directly
I should say every corporation is evil. Like, there are some movie studios out there that like do actually like are
Give a
trying
shit.
to like give a shit. Yeah, they give a shit.
Creatively.
But like when it comes to the multi-billion-dollar stuff, when it comes to like the top 5, they're all fucking evil. They're all terrible.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'll give you credit there, but I think the difference is that it was a top 6 until one took one of the other substantial ones, and there was a very large, there was a 3 or 4 years where Disney was so incredibly dominant in the pie chart of like how much business they were getting because of that deal. Thankfully, it seems like the pandemic happened, and there's this little thing that Tad brought up called Disney Plus that they doubled down on so much that they almost have. I don't know. We can talk about how they're treating theater releases nowadays. It's a
Okay, I do
wild.
actually have a counterpoint to this. I know your stance, if I believe it correctly, is that Disney is basically ruining the theater experience and banking on streaming services, right?
Yeah, because they can
Absolutely.
control 100% of the profit that way in a standardized subscription base. Well, I won't say it's 100% that way. I'm saying that like something that they can lean into over time. What I was more so saying is that because of the pandemic, they were able to double down, right? Like I'm not
Mhm.
saying like I think they jumped when they saw. Oh, I just started echoing. Sorry. I just like I feel like they took that time to really pull some things away to try doing some of these straight on to Disney Plus releases. And I think they have, because of that, their portion of the pie is now slimming down to be about the same. Like they've actually, because of Top Gun Maverick, there was a little while there. Who's that? Paramount or yeah.
Yeah,
One
that's
of them,
Paramount.
one of them shot up because they just got 3 good releases and there's no competition because Disney's really only had Doctor Strange as a big drop. But yeah, sorry, Tad. I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have a? Was I?
Well, no, my
Was I cutting
counterpoint
someone
to
off?
that of like the whole streaming service thing is yes, that's true. They are doing that. But at the same time, they weren't the ones that kind of came up with that mentality. I would argue that Netflix was the one that kind of started that whole like, oh, we're banking on
But
streaming and like
They don't
fuck
do
the
it as badly
theaters.
though.
Netflix
Like,
isn't a studio, though. I just want to add that they are not
yeah,
technically like they are kind of nowadays. You can make a weirder argument, but they started
they're
by
nowhere
a
near as big as
completely
Disney.
different. Their business was streaming before there was streaming, right? So you have
Oh,
to
it's
give
100.
credit
I
to
get that,
like
but what I'm
you
saying is
can't
that like
compare them to Disney
Netflix,
Plus.
what
They
I
took that more model, right?
what I'm saying is, yeah, that's what I'm saying is like
Yeah,
Netflix established the model and then Disney run. That's the thing with Disney. Like,
they should have stayed in their
it's one
lane.
of
Is
those
my
things where like
counterpoint.
they really don't have an original bone in their body right now. Everything they do is basically like, well, those other people did it and it
Did
worked
they
out for
ever?
them, so I guess we'll follow that
Well, they don't
trend.
want to take any risks. Like
No,
that's
no,
the
I
problem.
think it's even
Did they
beyond that. I
ever
think
have an original bone in their body? Is my
yes, I
Exactly.
think they did. Well, in a way
When?
though, right? Because they're in their adaptation of classical tales that were in the
They'd always
public
put their own
domain,
spin on
they
it.
were
Yeah.
really strong at that and they hired the right people to make the right choice. Like I think there was a time where like their original songs you got to include that, right? There's a Beauty and the
Mhm.
Beast area. There,
Yeah.
I will say that there
Lion
was.
King.
They've had
Yeah.
ebbs and flows, and they've tried things that are very original. Which kind of brings me to my point of nowadays, and kind of going off what we were just saying with the live action remakes. I think to them it actually behooves them to not be successful with these these original projects because then it gives them that power when negotiating with a new artist because they're like, I want to bring this new thing to the table, and they're like, maybe we can do that if you direct this first. They direct it first, and then they say, you know what? We're gonna hire Sam Raimi to complete the second half of this. You don't actually get to do your original thing. Sorry. And they're
Yeah,
really
no.
bad for like pulling the rug out on people. And then they cite things like Wrinkle in Time and John Carter and Tomorrowland, and they funded those and they under advertised them, and they knew that they were going to freaking fail. I'll give Wrinkle in Time credit. They advertised the crap out of that movie,
It
but
just
there's other
sucked.
original
Yeah.
movies that they're just putting out and burying just so that they can reference and say, look, it did poorly. We're not going to put things in theaters anymore because that one thing, or original things in theaters anymore because that did poorly. We're going to milk this cash cow that is a live action remake. And we're going to, because we've got all these examples of it working, because, aside from the few they're dumping on Disney Plus to get away, they have a really good track record with those things.
Yeah,
And
well, and here's just to go off of what you were
and
saying,
number
Tad. Like Netflix doesn't pander to streaming nearly as hard as Disney Plus does, in my opinion. Like when I watch
I
something
would argue
like
that
Wreck
they
It Ralph,
100% do.
when I watch something like Wreck It Ralph breaks the internet, and I see a scene where it's just Star Wars characters and Disney princesses getting together and all of these Disney IPs. All I can
Yeah,
think
but
of
that's
is,
not them
hey
pandering to
kids,
streaming. That's
yes,
pandering
it's
to their
pandering to the
IP
streaming.
base.
It's pandering to their IP base while
Yeah.
also pandering to their streaming service that conveniently has all of those IPs. So I can think of
Yeah.
is, hey kids, go watch Snow White, go watch
Yeah, but that's
Cinderella.
always been Disney. Disney always does
Give
that.
Figure
Something
6
fucking
they had
another
the
weird.
chance.
vault,
Yeah,
right?
Disney's always been like, hey, you remember that thing that we always used to do? Haha, like it wasn't that stupid kind of thing. Like,
yeah, no,
especially nowadays where like their animated films are going through kind of like a revisionist phase, and
yeah.
like all their movies have to be like, well, we have to like update the original, or we have
Well,
to
people
at
want
least
to
make fun of it.
Treasure
Like,
Planet
oh,
2, so I guess we're
the
related to
entire
Strange World.
premise of Frozen is literally you can't marry a guy you just fucking met. Like, it's
Oh god, I forgot about that.
that's their whole thing right now.
That's the whole
like,
point
oh
of it.
yeah, let's
and
make fun of ourselves.
and
Is it
back
though?
to
Because if we're looking
yeah.
at right now, we're getting a very poor quality of like animated film when you bring that up. Because now they've got they've got their fingers in Pixar, and I think there's something to be said. Because you did bring up earlier about how much I hate what they're doing to theaters. And I think that's a good point to say. Like, Lightyear played to thousands of empty theaters because they have these enormous deals, and they're basically strong-holding these theater owners by holding back the rest of their catalog, which is the Marvel stuff and the good Pixar stuff. If they force them to play a certain amount of something, no matter its quality. So if something like Lightyear lands and it just doesn't hit, you're actually
Who cares?
detracting
Yeah.
from the theater environment. Yeah, and it's just it really does.
Well, it's a
put it
slap on the
all-
wrist. Like, anytime they complain about a film bombing at the box office, I just laugh. Like, you're just gonna release this on Disney Plus and people watch it there. You know that, like, there's no negative effect to it doing poorly in theaters or doing poorly in Disney Plus, because you have the other way around every time as a safety net.
But the negative effect is onto the theaters.
Oh,
right?
absolutely,
and
yeah.
I think that adds into what Tad was saying about the almost tinfoil hat angle of like they're trying to bomb theaters. I don't know if I'd actually go that far, but I think they're trying to actively not help them.
Yeah, I think they don't care about theaters is the problem. Like, they
Yeah.
couldn't care less is
Yeah,
the
but
bigger issue.
I would say that there's a lot of people don't really care about theater. Like, a lot of the big studios right now. Like, I'm sorry, like
No,
fucking
no.
Warner Brothers, they don't give a shit. They really
I-
don't give a
I'm
shit
not saying it
about
was 9/11, but it certainly.
I was gonna say, like, I think that's a big reason Top Gun Maverick not only made so much money, but people loved it. Was a big
Yeah, but
reason
Top
was
Gun
because
Maverick
they
is also,
pushed.
like,
They
a film that
pushed
was made to be played in theaters.
They also pushed the theater experience constantly. Like, there's no you could just catch it on Paramount Plus later or anything like that. They were constantly barging on, like, no, you need to see this in theaters. You need to see this on the biggest screen possible. Like, they respected like the theater experience instead of just taking a cynical approach on it, which I think is why a lot of people gave it a lot of credit. And Dune was the same way you want about Warner Brothers, but they were constantly like, watch Dune on the biggest screen possible. It's not the same experience watching it at home. You could watch it in HBO Max, but the theater experience is definitely superior to that.
And it works because it's right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
They have that right, and they do push that far, and you can't say it's like blanket, because like any studio, almost to Tad's right, all the studios do this play except for Disney, do this play where they will push some as this theatrical thing and they will focus others. Like, at some point they just draw a line in the sand and they say, this one's going to be a streaming film, this one we're going to not only put in theaters, we're going to push. They're all guilty of it, but I just don't think like you're saying, Disney cares anymore, because you have things like as big as Thor and Doctor Strange and Black Panther were, I just didn't see the amount of advertisement. I think they're getting to a point where
Black Panther is
Marvel
off advertisement, but that's about
they're gonna go see it. Yeah. But then the push happens when it goes on Disney Plus. That's when I start seeing all the ads.
Yeah. Oh yeah, big time.
It can't just be a coincidence at a certain point, and that's their thing. It really does behoove them to drive everyone to this nostalgia well.
Don't you want to give these films a chance? Like Avengers Endgame, like, even look back on that film, and yeah, we all thought it was a satisfying conclusion and everything, but don't you want to see the first Avengers now? Don't you want to see those old Marvel movies again, where they go back in time periods to match those old Marvel movies? Don't you want to give Thor: The Dark World a chance? I'm starting to think there was a coincidence as to why that time travel plot was there, and I don't think it was just for the narrative.
No, it's not a coincidence at all.
Absolutely not.
Plans, and they're trying to get on their return on investment. They're trying to, they have a lot of salaries to pay. Just looking at it from a pure business standpoint. But yeah, I can totally see them just sort of kneading the dough in terms of which direction they want to go with streaming or theaters. Basically, what's the biggest money hog that we got at the moment?
Yeah, and they'll go to theaters if if for some reason streaming goes out of commission and doesn't make the money they expected, they'll be pushing for feeders again. They're just
we've already seen it.
That's the problem with Disney. Like, I'd argue they had this problem for years, but the thing is now is that they have no reason to hide it. They know that they can just be as cynical and soulless as possible, and people will still pay money to buy Disney Plus subscriptions or go see their movies in theaters. Like, I'd argue they were always cynical assholes. They just happened to work with a lot of talented people that wouldn't put up with their bullshit.
Because they're a corporation in a capitalist state.
Exactly.
Like, that's the thing is what I'm getting at here is that, like, I don't, like, yes, Disney is all of these things, 100%. But at some point, like, you can't hate the player. You have to hate the game. And that's why, like, when it comes to this thing, I hate the game. I hate the fact that, like, we live in a world where this
society. Yeah, you almost did the thing. Yeah, we almost got him, John.
Did the thing. But yeah, like, I do hate the fact that, like, this is where we've gotten to as, like, a society that, like, oh, this is, like, we allow corporations to do this. We allow fucking
just
these,
bend over.
like,
which brings me back to my first point that we allowed them to do this. Where in all the fighting, how many bribes were paid to let this gigantic monopoly happen? There's no way. When it was announced, everyone laughed at it. All of the
nobody believed it.
The roundup shows, your Christian Harloffs and your Screen Junkies, they laughed at the concept that this could ever even happen, and it did, and then they spat in our face, and they pissed in our Cheerios. And Tad, I can't give them credit just because the game sucks. They're the worst player.
Yeah, just because the game sucks doesn't mean you have to play along.
Hey, hockey's a tough game. But if you go out there trying to break people's necks, you're not in it for the right reason. And they're trying to break the neck of theaters. And as a fan, and as a filmmaker, and as somebody who gives a damn about the theatrical experience, I refuse to let Disney do what they're doing. And I do everything in my power to not support them, to not do anything else. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Okay? Well, yeah, that's just it. Like,
yeah, but like, here's the thing when it comes to that whole, like, yeah, they're the hardest hitting players or whatever. Like, I said this before. Me personally, I can't get upset at the wolf for doing what it does and eating the sheep. Like, yes, they're the hardest hitting player, but they're encouraged to do so because they got to make more money. Why do they got to make more money? Because their stockholders say, well, we have to have the stocks go up. And, like, it's the system at play that's the reason that they are so fucking cutthroat in this industry.
Well, yeah,
like,
it's a pig
like I said,
gonna
every
go out.
corporation would do this. Every single one of the big five would gladly,
but they didn't
gladly sell their mother.
But they
if
didn't,
it meant they would make more of a profit.
They didn't because they didn't have the bribe money, because it didn't seem physically possible, and because they have crossed the line in so many regards.
Well, they've crossed the line, but yeah, like, they are being encouraged to do so.
The wolf are doing what the wolf does, but what if it's a wolf in sheep's clothing?
Bam.
Bam. Well, here's the thing, like, is a pig...
Like, Disney couldn't get away with... The only reason the Disney-Fox merger happened was because there was already a precedent set by Warner Brothers.
That wasn't, though. No, the
Warner Brothers Discovery merger also, like, pushed the line.
That's
and was just different. Like, that's dangerously close to a monopoly. And then, like, Disney used that to be like, hey... If they can do that, so can we.
Tad, have you seen The Price is Right, where there's that game with the mountain and the little guy goes up the mountain? Do you win the prize if you cross over the line and fall down? No, you win the prize for going up to the edge and not crossing the line. I respect those that play within the boundaries and
even if they lose,
without corrupting an entire industry. Like, I don't know, man. As a filmmaker and somebody that wants
over the
to
line,
see
they pushed the line. That's what they did.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like, let's look at like a video game, for example.
The edge of the cliff and they haven't fallen yet.
Exactly. Like, let's look at video game. Like, are you gonna respect like competitive players that play properly, or are you gonna respect those that cheat even if they get more wins? You're gonna respect the people that play properly.
I'm not saying I respect them.
Like, oh no, you're just saying that's why it is. I get that. I agree.
You're just defending them.
No, well, here's the thing. Like, is a pig gonna go out of its way to eat if slop keeps coming at his doorstep?
Okay, we're getting crazy with these analogies. So if there's skip the dishes for pigs,
Yeah, exactly. Like an animal is only gonna go out of its
Sure.
way to eat if food doesn't keep lined up at its door, and that's
Yeah,
it
but-
sums up Disney in a nutshell.
If a tree falls in the woods, does a lumberjack get paid a bonus or not?
Yeah, they only had to go out of their way to get quality was because they couldn't get away with cynical bullshit beforehand. And I'm not saying it's right that they're doing it now, but there's like lots of people say like, oh, they treat their effects artists awful now and everything. Think of what happened with The Emperor's New Groove. Like that was going to be a completely different movie until the last 9 months, where they had to cut out all the musical numbers, cut out major characters, trim it down to 80 minutes. A hand-drawn animated film had to be made in 9 months, and it was a total absolute nightmare.
The reason we know about that is because Sting's wife made a little documentary called The Sweatbox, which Disney does not want you to know about.
Exactly. Yeah. Like Disney has always like acted like this before, and it kind of pisses me off that people just go like, "Well, what happened to the Disney I used to know?" I'm like, "This is the Disney you used to know."
Bingo. Yeah.
I actually, that's the other thing. It's like, so when you watch The Sweatbox, if anyone's ever like seen the film,
recommend it.
If you know anything
Yeah,
about how the entertainment industry works, nothing about that is surprising at all. But
No.
it's just the fact that Disney is wanting to keep a certain image and is wanting to not let people see kind of the nitty gritty of how they work, like behind the scenes, and how they're just like everyone else. That, I don't know, makes it's like the Barbra Streisand effect, where people will flock
Well, yeah,
to and watch.
they definitely have this like really bad habit of like glorifying themselves or like patting themselves. I don't know. I'm sure none of you guys actually watched the documentary that came out that I posted, the Mickey Mouse documentary.
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
It's like I forget what it's called, like History of the Mouse or something like that. But like it's basically like a documentary that Disney made that was like going back and like looking at like, oh, here it is, Mickey, the story of the mouse.
So I like rose-colored glasses, kind of the way they portray
It starts that way, and it was really pissing me off. Where it was just like, oh, this is like the ultimate fluff piece. It's Disney being like, oh,
just
Mickey,
jerking themselves off.
Mickey is so perfect.
But you
and like then it starts to get to a point where they actually start to address some of the criticisms of Mickey Mouse, like some of the more racist cartoons that he was in, and some of the
we
like
didn't even touch on that yet. Yeah.
the things like some of those little things, and like they actually do flat out come out and say like, yes, Mickey was always supposed to be an icon that represented everybody and was for everybody, and we weren't that. And like what we can do, the only thing we can do is apologize and try to do better. And like when the documentary's doing that, it's really fucking good. But then it turns around at the end again, in the last like 30 minutes, it's got to become like a big fluff piece again. It's just like Mickey is like, well, like, you know, because Disney recently has made a couple films that is like them talking about their past history. Like, I don't know if you guys saw Saving Mr. Banks.
Yep.
That was also like a bit of a fluff piece.
100%.
But like at the very least, like they did acknowledge that, like, yeah, when Walt Disney ran the studios, he smoked. He was kind of like an alcoholic. He kind of had like this image thing that he tried to propose, and like he was a bit of a dick.
He was a businessman first. Yeah.
He was a businessman first. Yeah. So like, I don't know. They're in a weird spot right now where it's just like they're trying to like acknowledge their past history.
They're stuck in the past.
And
like that's the problem. Like what made the Disney Renaissance so good was that they were just like, forget the past. Like, let's emphasize on taking these old stories and doing something new with them. Like, literally, the tagline for
the reason the Disney Renaissance worked was because somebody came along and said, hey, what we're really good at is animation. Maybe that should be where our focus is at, and we should like bring back the animation.
But they tried to, like, it's a best of both worlds situation is what I'm trying to say. Like, yes, they did that. Maybe that was the goal, like the first intention, but the goal was to do something new with it. And it felt like they were like actually trying to push it in a new direction, at least in terms of storytelling and like how far they could go with mature subject matter. And even in the early 2000s, they straight up said like less songs, more explosions. It's like, okay, that's something. You know, that's like a new idea that panned out for some movies, Atlantis, and didn't pan out for others. But like at least that was something. But now that they're so obsessed with covering up their past image and covering up what made them look bad, when they should just make something new, make something
But
interesting.
they can't.
But they
saw
can't.
that.
Yeah,
acknowledge
exactly.
the criticisms or the problems that they had in the past far long after it's relevant.
Exactly. Like
Yeah,
we don't care
that's
anymore.
the thing, right? It's just like at
What's
this
it
point,
called?
like
Statute
really,
of
like
limitations.
Exactly.
What? The statute.
Yeah, statute of limitations. Is that what it's called? Where a crime doesn't matter after a certain time. amount of time?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Just a nudge. Go on, Tad. I was just I throwing a jab. Go.
No, no, that's 100% true. I agree. I can't argue with that. That's a valid point. Fucking like at this point, yeah, like oh, Disney had a racist past, like
Oh no,
course they do.
every film ever made had a racist past to it. Every story ever made had a racist past to it. You want to know the name of H.P. Lovecraft's cat?
Smoking joint back in the day, when that was very
But like,
common.
here's the other
Exactly.
thing too. Like, the only reason Disney does this is because Disney has an image of like we're like the family friendly, like.
But this is
we're the
making that
stuff you
worse.
show your kids,
Well,
you know, like
that's the thing they do worse. Like, it's funny you're making my points for me, Tad, but that's the thing they do worse than any other studio. Sony is Suits. They don't pose as a child-friendly, come here, take pictures, come to our theme park. They're a studio. Netflix, razz them all you want. They know they're streaming. They've always focused on streaming ever since they figured it out. And I will not hold them back for it. But Disney are playing games outside of their area. They're fucking. Sorry, I've lost
is it
track.
out of their
I'm
area though?
I'm
they're
angry
outside of their
now.
lane.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like they want to put this face on and like be the smiley little like kid friendly thing that you're posing, because we all know it. We grew up with it. Everybody grew up with some form of Disney cartoon. You see the TikTokers doing the stupid 3D Mickey Mouse dance now. It's all like some generation has some stain of it on them, and that's their game. Really, get them young, get them hooked, and then they'll go see nostalgia bait when they're older. You get twice the dose. It's like
And
just the
they
worst
all bank on
strategy.
they all
But
bank
it's a
on
tactic
nostalgia.
that works. It's
Yeah.
a very
I know
good
people
tactic.
who are I
Sorry,
know
what are you
people
saying,
who
Devin?
are like parents now. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's you know, I know people who are parents now and they just remember the Disney that they grew up with and they assume the new Disney's not that much different. So they'll like put on Disney Plus and stream it for their kids and they won't, think twice about what they're watching.
Yeah, throw on
That's
Song of the
just it.
South for the kids.
They'll never show that.
I'm just kidding.
Show 'em
You know what I mean?
Dumbo.
Like that, they bury those little things so that you can show. Like that's even better of a point. Is that like look at what's on Disney Plus? They have limited it. They have randomly started taking butts out of friggin' Splash. You know what I mean? Like somebody's
Yeah,
butt crack
some
was
of
in it.
them.
Like
Yeah.
there's like crazy weird censorship they're trying to pull. They're still trying to get in the pocket of China, even though they fail almost every time they try. It's ridiculous, man. Like I am so frazzled that every time I start a point, I just get off track.
Well,
But you know what I mean? You guys are raising great points.
here's something I want to
I
point.
have
Yeah,
a-
go.
I have a question to ask you, Darryl, and I hope this isn't too personal, but I am just curious. You are a new parent.
Yeah.
And your child isn't old enough that they're watching movies yet. And so I'm just curious, if not Disney, which media entertainment conglomerate would you want to subject them to?
We've actually talked about this, and in the stage where you would show one Disney, like there's a couple exceptions. There's a couple that are just like very near and dear to Jamar's heart. But I'm leaning into Bluth, is that his name? All I can think of is
Don
the Bluth.
Bluth,
Don
yeah.
Bluth.
Don Bluth. It is it's both Bluth. Yeah, I'm leaning into those. You know what I mean? Like I
Giga
really loved Five
Oh,
Goes
yeah.
West as a kid. I really loved The Secret of Nim. That stuck with me really
Yep.
hard. And his catalog is like decent. It's a little bit more like better jokes for the adults. That hits me just as hard as
Mhm.
nostalgia. We have bought, I'll be real, we've bought one thing Disney based for our kid. Do you know what it is, Tad?
Nightmare
No,
Before
I
Christmas.
No, it's diapers so that she can shit on his fucking face. Sorry, it's violent, but that was my way around it because we got him as a gift, and we were like, "Oh, we're not just gonna be dicks and like not take diapers because of it." But then Jamar was like, "Yeah,
That's
but what does
funny.
she do to them?" And I was like, "There we go. It's like the Trump toilet paper thing."
Oh my
Um,
god, that's
yeah.
fantastic.
Thanks for asking.
Oh,
Holy
you're welcome.
shit.
But like, I do got, I
fun
do got to.
watching Five Goes West. I had like a VHS tape of that. I never even saw the first one, the second one.
Neither did I. Yo,
First
same.
one's good.
Apparently it's amazing, but I've like Fievel Goes West is the one for me for some reason.
Oh yeah.
It's whatever you got as a kid.
Don
But what were
Bluth's
you saying, Ted?
catalog isn't that extensive though. Like, what happens when you run out of Don Bluth films? Like, are you gonna try like?
Then
more
you go to
Sony
Shrek.
films, or like,
You go
yeah,
DreamWorks.
There's some good DreamWorks. I might step it up to like, okay, even though they're purchased by and owned by Disney, I think there's a core amount of Pixar that you could show a kid that is not Disney.
Terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It hasn't faded. Because don't get me wrong, there's still some good stuff, but like my kid will see Up when they're the proper age, you know.
Yes.
They'll definitely see like Wall-E. Wow, man, I'm gonna have to wait a while to show them some Pixar. It's
Coco,
awesome.
Toy Story. You could do Toy Story. You
Yeah,
have some.
Toy
Maybe
Story.
skip one at the youngest age. Skip all the nightmare fuel.
Yeah, but like Bugs Life's good. Like you know, there's definitely stuff out there. I think being like,
Coco.
oh well, what would you not like? How could you not? It's like I think it's pretty easy. I just don't choose to. And if she discovers it on her own, or she goes over to someone's house and she's like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing. I want this. I'm not gonna stop her. The kid can do whatever she
How
wants.
can he be like, no son or daughter of mine will be subjected to it?
I'll be
And
like,
then
I
maybe
don't want a fucking mural of it on your wall over you as you sleep.
Oh
But like,
god.
you know, do what you want. Jamar, do you want to speak up? Like, am I saying anything that you don't agree with
Fate
right
Mouse
now?
is
'Cause-
watching you.
oh, she just yelled, I agree from the other room. Trust me.
Nice. Here's something I want to point out.
I'll take your word for it.
Here's something I want to point out.
Yep.
Netflix, Sailway Wanbound, they had a lot of great animation this year. Cyberpunk Edge Runners is fantastic. The Love and Death Robots Season 3 is really well
yeah,
done.
but we're gonna see a lot
Intergalactic.
less of that coming up.
It's
because
fantastic.
They had like a huge cut to their animation.
That's true, but here's my counter
But look how
argument.
much they spent.
Yeah, here's my counter argument. What good animated movie or show did Disney have this year?
What?
Exactly.
I didn't hear-
What
No,
good
I'm sorry, I
animated?
didn't hear you.
Oh, no worries. What good
Ian,
animated show or?
answer.
Yeah, sorry. What good animated show or movie did Disney release
This year?
this year?
Tad would know. He sees it all. It's the
Andor.
kids.
That's it. Not animated.
No, that's not animated.
Oh. I hear good things about the Owl House. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard good things.
That's a continuation. Well, I guess Love, Death, and Robots is technically a continuation.
No, Owl House is its own thing.
Well,
What
it's
If?
but the first two seasons came out like beforehand, and What If came out like a year ago, or was it 2020? I don't think it came out this year.
No, I think What If was earlier this year.
Yeah, I think it was January.
Was it? Hang on, I'm gonna do some research real quick. What If?
Yeah. We might as well just.
But even
look
then,
up
What If wasn't that
animated
great.
Disney-
2021.
The actual producers for this show.
Yeah, exactly. 2021. What If?
Okay.
Like Disney used to be, like, of course, like a corrupt company, but they did have to
I
work
know.
with a
The
lot
Proud
of.
Family. Proud Family reboot.
I haven't seen it.
Haven't seen
It's
it.
better than the original.
the original's Kino. Come on.
No,
that
the
run-
original's Kino, but like in the here's the thing.
Yeah.
The original was great, but they were like being held back in some certain areas. Now because of like the times have changed, they can go into a lot more detail about certain things. Like in the original, there's like that one kid, I forget his name. I want to say Michael, that like his whole thing is just like, yeah, like I just really like dressing up in women's clothing and like I like girly things. Like, is that so wrong? And like he becomes like a supporting character in the new series, and he's actually one of like the best characters in the show.
Yeah, he was
Like-
pretty funny. I remember. But like Disney used to be such like a shareholder in animation. Like they really treasured the art form. But nowadays it seems like they treat the art form like it's disposable, just like everything else. And that's such
I
a
think-
shame
I
to
would
me.
say
That's
they treat it like it's
particularly
disposable. I would
I
say they treat it more
disagree.
so like it's like a business.
No,
Where it's just
Exactly,
like,
which
oh,
is
we have, like-
disposable.
No,
I
that those two are not the same thing. I would
Sure
say
they are.
business is like, oh, well, we have like our Disney style, and we're not gonna like go and try to push the art form anywhere outside that Disney style. And then you have like other studios like Into the Spider-Verse
Yeah.
or like
That's
those
Sony,
kind
though.
of movies that are like, no, like we want to push the art form, we want to try new things, we want to
Yeah,
merge 2D
exactly.
and 3D and do like
That's
all
the
this
thing.
like crazy ass shit. That's the stuff Disney should be doing.
And they
Exactly.
But
were
like,
completely beat. They got their pants down in that regard because, and I think you can kind of trace it back. We just forget because of how it all went down. Pixar beat them, guys. That was their biggest competition. Pixar walked in and beat their asses into the ground, and their response was, "Buy them. If you can't win, buy them."
Buy
And
them.
If
you've
you
got
can't beat them, buy
it's
them.
it's literally that scene where Michael Scott loses the deal, so he steals the salesman. Like it. Like I swear to God, it's like I don't know. Uh, I lost my train of thought. This seriously gets me so heated. I swear, man. Every time I get into a train of thought, I'm just losing it.
But
What
that's
were you saying,
what
Pat?
to carry on with what you were saying, Tad. That's what disposable is to me. It's like you just make something that's within like your guidelines
no,
as
because
strictly
like
as
you can
possible to
still.
get out there and be forgotten about. That's
Oh,
literally what being disposable is, and that's what they
well,
want.
yeah.
They want these
I
movies to
would
come
say
out there like every
disposable is
6 months
something
or
that's
so.
just like they're obligated to make or something like that. And I don't think like
I'd
any of the
argue that's
movies
also
that they
true.
do make. I don't think any of the movies that they do make are like made out of obligation. I do think that like the people who actually make these animated movies like do actually want to do something. Like and Encanto was good. I definitely still
Yeah,
feel
but
like the people who made that, it wasn't like they phoned it in. Frozen 2 they phoned in, but like
Well, Frozen 2 is
Encanto
also
and things
rushed.
like
Yeah.
that, like I
and
haven't
that's my
seen
bigger
Strange
point,
New
though.
World, but it still looks like the people who like were in who made that movie, like they legitimately wanted to make something good. Like
I
Well,
mean,
yeah, you
it
can
looks
have
that way.
like people involved want to make something good, but I'm saying like the writers and the people, the reason for it existing is disposable. Like Disney like has to pander to different cultures in this day and age. It kind of like every year it seems like they're just picking a different culture. Like this year it's China with Ray and the
Well,
Last Dragon. This year it's Madrigal and Kanto. This
yeah,
year
that's
it's
representation, and I have
Hawaii.
nothing wrong with that.
I
I
have
have
yeah,
nothing
nothing
wrong with
wrong
that.
with
I have nothing
representation.
wrong with that either if it's out of passion. Like everything ever all at once, like that's representation out of pure passion. That's
yeah, and
something they
so
genuinely want to explore. Whereas with Disney, I don't know, something feels like they're just ticking off a checkbox. Like which country haven't we crossed off yet, so we can get their favor and get them to buy off Disney Plus subscriptions. Like I don't know, something about it feels forced to me. Like representation is great if you're passionate about it, but if you're not passionate about it, it just comes across like you're trying too hard. Again,
I would argue
desperately trying to fix
representation is
that past
important no
image.
matter what.
It,
yeah,
I would
it,
say that doesn't.
representation is important, then it needs to be explored with the best intentions.
well, to
I
both
don't.
your guys' point, I think you're both a little bit right. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too. That's the
And
reality.
that's
They're
my
trying to have
problem. Yeah.
exactly. They're trying to front as
Well,
though
what
it's
good is
only
cake if
for
you can't eat it?
no, but I'm just saying, as lot like they're trying to front as if it's for those reasons, but they're like to Ian's regard. I feel like since Coco, they were like, oh, this is something else that we can just kind of go to. We pick a different
Yeah,
culture.
Coco
We
came out
adjust
of
it
pure passion
slightly.
to explore
And
that.
it's not
Yeah.
and whatever it's that I do agree with Tad in the same regard. Sure, if you're doing it for representation, that's perfectly fine. But I think our entire conversation that's led up is that you can't believe that with the company we've been talking about because they like to front all the nice stuff and what they actually are behind the scenes, right? I think they've kind of lost my goodwill in that regard, so I lean more towards Ian on that. But to like my point I was saying before, I think this is heavily to do with this Pixar thing though, because they like all like saying, oh, Encanto versus Frozen 2, like, dude, it's almost impossible to tell anymore because they just mined all of the creative style of Pixar to try and make their own films. Like it has that same like bubbly
Bleeds
kind
together.
of bounce. It has like the same finish. It like by all means they're doing little differences here and there. Like Soul looked really interesting and whatnot, but like I feel like there is no like when you're saying like where's the creativity, they're leaning on Pixar who they bought to bring the creativity, and they can just kind of beeline it because they love their A/B cycling on movies, how they
Well,
think
it's funny
one's
you
going to be
say
great,
that
one's not.
actually, because like now that the way that I've been told apparently is that a lot of the people who used to work at Pixar have now migrated to Disney,
There you go.
and now Pixar is like trying to foster like the new talent, and that's why we got like these movies like Luca and
Turning Red.
like you know, like a lot of the like
And
now like
Soul and
Pixar is
Turning
like
Red. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, Turning Red. That was the other one I was thinking of, like Turning Red, where it's just like I kind of it's weird because it's like yes, I'm kind of upset that they're like pushing Pixar aside and being like fuck this company, like we're gonna like take all the people who made that company great and put it into our company. But at the same time, that also allows the people who work at Pixar to try new
But
things.
I feel like that
Like
should be a different
Luca
sub
and
company.
Turning Red
Yeah,
look
it's
different than the average Pixar film. Like now that Pixar is like kind of experimenting more.
not that different though, man. Like I feel what you're saying, but we got to remember different is Spider-Verse, and you can't
Oh,
like
100%.
hold
Different
up
is
those
Spider
three
Verse.
photos
Different
and know
is
which
Del
one
Toro's
came first.
Pinocchio. Like that's
Yeah,
different.
exactly. Or like let's say even Wes Anderson, he makes animated stop motion movies as well, and they have a completely unique style to everything we've just
It
talked
feels
about.
like one of
Well,
his
you have
movies.
Jan Speckenmeyer's stop motion animated adaptation of Alice in
Or
Wonderland, which
that too. And
Oh,
Phil
dope.
Tippett. Yeah, also like Phil Tippett's Mad God. Like those
Yep.
films look so much different and have so much more soul and passion
So
crafted
yeah,
into their presentation. Whereas something about like Disney just feels like, yeah, it's well done and you certainly put a lot of money into it, but where's the heart? Like where's
yeah.
the soul? Like it's just
So
it's missing.
that
It's
came
like
out
they're
in 2020.
it's basically what happened with Rings of Power, where it's like, yeah, if we just shower it with all of the money, that will fix all of its problems. But all the money in the
that
world
is
can't cover up a lack of heart.
well, that's their biggest issue, right? They
Yeah,
think they can buy heart now. Like they literally, and that's the thing. Pixar had the most heart, so they bought it. Like
because they
it's
have no
their
reason to believe
brand.
otherwise. But they
Yeah.
still shouldn't go down that road at the
No,
same
no, they
time.
shouldn't have. Of course not. That's my whole point of all of this. I think there was a
Yeah.
point where I would have never been as vengeful as I am to Disney if they just took a slightly different path. God knows how many years ago, maybe around Pixar time, and just focused, like we're all saying, on what made them good. And maybe we would have got like crazy new animated versions of the animated movies, which makes more sense than just making a live action word for word adaptation. Like I still don't get how those made the money they got and then kept getting made. And the weird no emotion Lion King somehow makes $1 billion. Like what
Yes.
is the world?
Because nostalgia is a very powerful thing, my friend.
Oh,
And
we don't
they
need to tell
know
me
how to use it. Like if
And
you
they know
see
it.
like the Lion King remake, like characters that had like normal introductions in the original movie get like these epic bombastic scenes where like this loud music plays and they like come out from this shining bright light. It's like they know what they're doing. They know
I've
that
said
the
it
audience just wants
before
to see
and
these
I'll say it
characters.
again. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The price of nostalgia is steep and unforgiving.
Dude, Pride Rock. That's literally a marketing piece they
Oh
use
yeah.
for Lion King remake.
It's the circle of
Like
life.
again, it's
Very
one of those
copyrighted.
things where like it sucks, but it works. Like
Exactly.
it clearly works. Like
It
these
works
films are
until
making
it
no.
$1
doesn't.
billion.
Yeah, to Devin's point, it works until it doesn't, and I think it really stopped working for them around Lady and the Tramp.
Oh,
And
then
yeah,
people were like, "Oh God, what's happening?"
yeah, and I think since like we'll see what happens with Little Mermaid if it's going the Aladdin route, but like
It's
even
It's
going
with
the
going the
Lion King
Aladdin,
Aladdin
route.
route.
It's
Yeah,
going
it's
the
going.
Lion King
If
route.
anything, I kind of
you
hope
guys
the
both
Peter
just
Pan
had
and
separate
Wendy
thoughts.
film
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Oh, well, David Lowery. Okay,
that David
don't bring
Lowery's
David
doing.
Lowery into this. Damn it, you found my kryptonite. Oh man,
He's
here we go.
him and James Gunn
Bad
are the
segue.
only him and James Gunn are the only hopes for Disney at
Yeah.
this point. Like if they
No,
give him
No,
James
Ryan
like
is running
Coogler's up there too.
WB. No, oh my God, you're
disagree.
raising an even better point. Thank you, Tad. Disney has a horrible thing where they will take ripe new talent and then lock them into these giant friggin' contracts. You know, the last original movie we saw from Ryan Coogler? It was Creed, because he can't make anything else anymore. But Black Panthers, he could have made 4 movies
Hey
in that
Daryl,
time.
Daryl,
Oscar-worthy stuff.
who's making the Lion King 2? I'll tell you who's making the Lion King 2. Barry Jenkins is making the Lion King 2.
No,
Yes.
you're lying.
Barry Jenkins
No,
is
you're
making the
not.
Lion King 2.
Don't tell me
I
this
am
on
not
air.
fucking kidding. I am not fucking kidding.
Daryl, I have a
No,
question
this is the
for
real
you.
kryptonite.
Daryl, so you are I would say aspiring filmmaker, but no, I would say you're a somewhat accomplished filmmaker.
Whoa.
In fact, you have you have a screening for a film coming up soon.
Okay,
Ooh.
yeah, yeah.
I'll let you
Yeah.
plug that later.
Will
If
do.
Disney saw your film, hypothetically speaking, if Disney saw your film and said, "Hey, we want you to work on this new project that we have coming out in a few years, because we're looking for talented new vision to exploit," and it was say $100 million contract, what would you say?
I've thought about this. And I probably would have always said no. I would never take a deal. I would never do business with the devil. But David Lowery showed me otherwise. He made a little film with his paycheck from Pete's Dragon called A Ghost Story. And it is one of my favorite films ever made.
Then he made the Green
And
Knight.
yeah, well, but Green Knight is a different paycheck and whatnot. But like literally, the paycheck he got from Disney was spent. Like that was his executive producing portion into whatever. And like, I just feel like there is a way to still make your own movies and not sign that contract. But you have to be smart enough, and you have to have that you have to have the balls. Especially like Tad says, Disney doesn't have the balls anymore. So bring a proper lawyer and say, I'm not budging unless I only am on a one film contract. That I'll do that for 100 million or whatever you're saying. And like, yeah, I'll take that risk and put myself out there and probably fail. Cause that's the other thing. It's a complete win-win situation for Disney. If the film's great, they get to say, oh, look at the talent that we discovered, even though they were already making acclaimed stuff before that. And if they fail, they get to say, oh, we put Lord and Miller on on the Solo remake. Oh, it's all their fault. Let's bring in Ron Howard.
Ryan
Like,
Johnson. Ew. Gross.
Hey, Ryan Johnson's good. Shut up.
yeah.
Oh no,
leave
no,
Ryan
but
out.
that's what they said. Like they basically were just like Ryan Johnson had creative control on The Last Jedi. Ryan Johnson, and I'm just like, yeah, you guys thought it was gonna be a misfire,
And yet
didn't you?
he's still apparently attached for a Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah,
still.
and is making tons of Knives Out movies. Like he did recover, and some fairness. And
I
like,
don't think there was any bad blood between Ryan Johnson and Lucasfilm. Is all I'm getting at.
Yeah, no,
Ryan
Lucasfilms
Johnson
knew
has
what
said
was
nothing but say that
what
like
they
it's
did.
working.
Yeah.
Working on The Last Jedi was like one of the best experiences of his life.
Like
So-
I'm just saying, like Lucasfilms knew that it may have pissed people off. Not necessarily
and like
that's
give
a bad
credit
movie.
to like Lucasfilm, at least like Ryan Johnson made the film that he wanted to make.
That's
Like
true.
as divisive as it was, they gave him
he
as
did
much
it.
creative control as they wanted.
I'd
As
argue he
fantastic
didn't
as
have
the
the
film is.
most creative control as much as they're saying, but he definitely
Yeah.
had more than the others. I'll give you that.
I kind of thought that was your point, Ian, that like
Yeah.
they tried to tote that as like, oh, all the creative control, but they're still Disney.
Yeah, no,
Like,
I
still you
think
wanna
there was
push
some
that.
creative control, but compared to J.J. Abrams, yeah, nowhere near as much. I'll give you that.
J.J. Abrams isn't that creative.
Oh,
but
no,
that's
it's-
for another.
That's
podcast.
for another
Very
podcast.
He has a
Disney
mystery
in
box.
general
and
is
has written
pretty
on that.
inconsistent when it comes
Yeah,
to like
let's-
who they give creative control to, because like you often hear stories of like, oh yeah, like there's this one director that like I was attached to do this, and then they said like, oh, can you do it this way? And they're like, nah, I'm good, I'm gonna bounce. And then you hear other directors like James Gunn or like David Lowery who are like, nah, man, like Disney lets me do what I want to do, and it's like, it's very
Yeah, but
weird,
James Gunn
but, like,
was that was true for the first Guardians of
No.
the Galaxy, but the second Guardians of the Galaxy apparently he had like tons of studio interference, like Disney wanting to get off his
no,
back.
not at all.
What? Really?
He's gone on record saying like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is like way more his film than
Yeah, I
Guardians of
thought
the
it was the
Galaxy Volume
opposite.
1.
Oh,
Yeah,
did I get it mixed
one-
up? I apologize.
Well, no,
Yeah,
one.
Volume 1 was like he had like another screenwriter on board, and like he wrote the script, and like there was like a meeting with like Kevin Feige or something where he's like, Kevin was just like, yeah, this is good, but like can you make it a little more like James Gunn? And he was just like, all right, your funeral, but like and then Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is the one that like he wrote himself. It was 100% like his film. And apparently the same with the holiday special.
I apologize. I got that
Guardians
mixed
of the
up.
Oh, no worries, man. But to that point, look at the IP though. I think we just kind of cracked the nut. They have this sliding scale. There's probably some giant chart in an office in the Disney building of where they rank all of these movies. And right near the bottom, there was this throwaway film in the wake of Mary Poppins called Pete's Dragon. And they didn't care at all what happened with that. So that's how Lowry was probably able to just
True.
really do what he wants, right? Like
Fucking
True,
true.
if I'm thinking,
Which
and
is like Andor. Fucking
Yeah.
that's why like
Exactly.
you look at like the things like
Yeah.
Book of
The
Boba
less
Fett, and it's
involved
just like,
Disney
oh,
is.
Boba Fett's a big name. We have to like fucking get our little fingers into it.
And
But
look how
nobody
Boba
gives a
Fett
shit
turned
about
out.
Andor. So like,
Whatever.
oh my
yeah.
god, yeah, like we've cracked the nut.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
it's just that they have this sliding scale. Maybe Lowry won't do such an amazing job on this
Well-
Wendy movie, and it'll prove our point that it was a bigger IP. He thought, well, they gave me all this creative freedom, I'll get it again, and he'll come
Nope.
back just to realize, oh no, this is one of our flagships. What do you mean the same person isn't playing Captain Hook as is playing the dad? That can't be. You know what I mean? I feel like there's just going to be certain things he gets fought on. We'll see. But I'm not holding my breath for that one. I think he got
I'll
one good
wait
movie out
to
of this.
see what people say about it. Then I'll check it out.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, I'll
That's
check
David
on like
Lowery.
Disney Plus or something.
Well,
I do
that's
love
the thing.
David Lowery.
If it goes straight to Disney Plus, we'll know because well, I say that, but then Tad also said, even though they stole your script, you also said that you loved that Chip and Dale movie that went
Oh,
straight. So
I hate how much I love that movie.
I hate
Exactly.
that movie, period. So
it's not a given that going to Disney Plus is actually bad because, again, like we've said tonight, they actually sometimes hold their Disney Plus releases in higher regard. If there's a
well, also consider the situation James Gunn is in. We haven't even talked about why he was
Well, he's
fired from
leaving.
Disney in the first place.
Yeah,
And
so
that's
ridiculous.
because of the quote unquote blackface photos from the
No, that
90s.
wasn't blackface. There
Way
was tweets
back.
about pedophilia.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
was it the tweets? I thought it was like the
Yeah.
photos about blackface. I got that mixed up. I'm sorry, but those tweets were made like years and years and years ago. And James Gunn has gone on record and saying like, "I apologize. I was a very different person then and everything." But they basically said, "We don't care. You're fired from Guardians of the Galaxy 3." Months later, the Guardians actors were so pissed about it that they openly stated, "We will quit if James Gunn does not come back," in the middle of filming Avengers Endgame. So Disney was basically like, "We gotta get James Gunn back." And
he
now
did
he's
work
running a
on.
different
He did
studio.
work a little bit on Avengers Endgame though. Like
He-
he was.
well, yeah, he was very loosely involved though. Apparently, he wasn't involved as much as he was with Infinity War, where he straight up directed like the Guardians in that movie, like all the scenes with the Guardians of 4. Apparently, he directed all
Yeah.
of those. You can tell.
But
like,
you know
it
what? That
has
actually does
style.
kind of lead into something that I kind of wanted to talk about with this whole like toxic fan bases and
Oh.
like how does like they're just getting worse, and how does Hollywood like pander to them or like deal with them, and like what are the good ways and bad ways to go about going it. Because like honestly, like this is one of the shit that pisses me off the most is like you got like these people out there that are just like fandom to a toxic degree, and they're you got these studios that are like pandering to this the lowest common denominator to try and please these assholes. And like when they really should just be saying like, you know what, fuck you, you're not like you're not real fans, and like we're gonna go and make our own shit. Like I
mean,
don't know.
Some they just get afraid of how real it is because sometimes you're dealing with an actual movement on your hands and you want to sniff it out early, and sometimes you just they're somebody's ripping the equations in the accounting department
Yeah.
trying to figure out.
Well, what
whether
bugs
it's
me
worth
is
it.
when they just like take out any negative criticism at all. Like you should look at the negative criticism and take it on the chin. You don't have to buy all of it. You don't have to pander to all of it. Cough, Rise of Skywalker. You
Yeah,
just
don't
need
have
to take it
well,
on the chin and learn from like all of the, because there are people
But yeah,
you know
like
have a weird way of showing it
Rise
sometimes,
of
but some
Skywalker
people
is like
yeah,
the
yeah.
perfect example though.
Exactly.
Because, like,
you nailed
yeah.
it.
Fucking The Last Jedi was a very divisive film. I personally didn't think it was that bad, but like
I
I
loved
know a
it.
lot of other people who
I
fucking
love to
hated
hate
that
it.
film. And like they hate it so much that they're sending death threats to actors,
Oh, so
and they're
fucked.
fucking
I hate
doing
that.
like all this like horrible shit.
Yeah, Last of
And
Us
then
2,
like
same situation.
everything that's wrong with the Rise of Skywalker is I 100% believe is because of like the response to The Last Jedi. Because
Yeah.
like I've read the leaked the original sequel
Colin
that they were gonna
Trevorrow,
do,
yeah.
Duel of the Fates or whatever, and like it's not great, but it's better than what we got. And fucking you can just, I don't know, you watch that entire movie, The Rise of Skywalker, and you can just literally tell that like the studio executives were like, please, for the love of God, don't make a film that is going to be divisive. Like, we don't want our actors to get death threats anymore. Please, just like make one more film. Make it as like absolutely stale and like
Fan
no
servicey.
risk whatsoever and fan servicey. Like, make them happy, just so they'll shut the fuck up.
And they
And,
succeeded.
like,
Everybody did agree. Everyone agreed it sucked.
Yeah, I know. Like there was no discourse in that
I've
one.
actually
Everyone
talked
just
to
hated it.
certain diehard, like I worked with some people who are like, this one guy's a real dedicated like Star Wars fan, and he said he actually liked the last movie.
What?
Kind of want to get him.
Sorry.
I mean,
Get him
good
on
for
right
him.
now.
I mean,
Call him. Call him
Yeah.
in live on air.
I mean, good for him, I guess.
Okay.
It's okay to be wrong sometimes, but in all
I mean,
seriousness.
hey, if he has like personal reasons for liking it, like,
As long as it's
fucking who
genuine
knows?
and not just like, well, it wasn't like The Last Jedi, so which
Yeah.
some people
No,
legitimately
I
said.
think it's
Yeah.
genuine in that case.
Okay, that's
but I am
fair.
curious because I always like to balance out kind of different perspectives, even though I felt like I was in a state of denial about how terrible that movie was. Like, I remember
It's
writing
the
this
Phantom
really kinda
Menace all
funny-
over again.
No, Phantom Menace
Yeah,
was at
like-
least funny. Phantom Menace is better.
I saw the Star
Nah,
Wars.
Phantom
I
Phantom
liked
Menace
the
is
Star
better,
Wars.
but like when that movie first came out,
It was a
very
similar
much a thing of
response,
just
yeah.
like, nah, that didn't suck. It was
What
Star
are you
Wars
talking
movie.
about? It was
There's no
so
way it
good.
could suck.
Yeah. What are you talking about? And like
Denial.
yeah, but
Yeah,
people
we were in denial for a long
yeah,
time.
you
with
gotta
that
take
movie.
criticism on the chin. I forget who said this. I think it was James Wan who said for Aquaman, like he was getting upset with people that were upset at the negative reviews. They basically said like you need to look at the negative comments because at the end of the day, they do want to help you out, and you gotta take that in order to become a better director. And I have so much respect for that. That is such a rare point of view to have this day because you hear people like people at Disney or Olivia Wilde or anybody along those lines being like, oh, you don't like this because of blank. You don't like this because you're sexist or racist or anything along those lines. Like, they just can't take any kind of criticism at all. And yeah, some of the criticism is because people are bigots, but some of the criticism is because people genuinely didn't like what you had to offer and they're trying to explain their point of view. And you can't just shut them out and stay close-minded. That's what leads to so many bad films at Disney and many other companies these days. Just people refusing
Yeah, but like
to
the
accept any kind of
difficult part
criticism.
of that is like, how do you separate the people who like have legitimate criticism?
That's why you gotta take it on the
versus
chin.
the people who are bigoted and just like, because like let's
gotta
use
take
a
it on the
recent
chin.
example, right? You look at shit like the Prey movie, the last Predator movie that came out.
Mhm.
Like, you read the reviews for that, and like it's mostly positive, but then you look at the negative reviews, and you can start to see like the recurring themes of like, oh man, like a woman would never take down the Predator.
Well,
And
yeah.
like,
Even that had like better arguments where it's like it's not so much a woman could take down the Predator, it's more so like a squad of military members could barely take down the Predator. I'm like, that's a legitimate argument versus what you said, which is
that's not a
clearly
legitimate
just...
argument
Well, no,
because if
that's
you see the
correct.
film,
I mean,
you know why she can take down the Predator.
Boy, we'll get
The
into
film
that on the
legitimately
we'll
makes
get
good
into
points
that on
of
the
why she's able to take
different
down the
discussion. I
And
don't know
also,
if I
to be
agree
fair,
with
the
that,
other
but-
guys don't do shit. Only Arnold, the one man, takes it down. So it's not a squadron, really. They
That's
all
true.
just die,
Yeah,
right?
that's fair.
So it's one strong man versus one little
But
girl.
like, so,
again,
I'm saying there
it's half and
are
half,
like
right? There's a
people.
consistent amount of people who do post these things. We can't just ignore them because there is also some valid criticisms when a majority of them are only upset.
I
because
don't know if I go as far as to say majority. I think
a majority of what we're seeing in the comment.
Well, that's just it. They're the
vocal
top
minority.
comments. They're the vocal minority, exactly. But that's why I say like you gotta take it on the chin. Like, yeah, those reviews you clearly can't take seriously, but dig out the ones that have genuine things to say and keep that in mind. Like, you can't just block all of it out, is what I'm trying to say. Like, you gotta have a middle ground.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way you can grow as a creator.
I'm just trying to say, like, how do you find that middle ground, right?
Well,
because,
sometimes you gotta go digging, but other times it does happen. Yeah, other times it does come up. I don't know. Like, it's just something to keep in mind.
If you take any objects and you kind of balance your fingers on either end and you just slowly work them toward the middle, you will naturally find its center point. It'll naturally find its center balancing
Yeah,
point.
that's actually a good way of putting it.
I was just thinking of a random fact. I wasn't trying to think. I wasn't actually.
Well,
looking at
it
the
ended up
conversation
being a
right
good
now.
fact, so we thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Anyways, what else is there to say, man?
Yeah, I
Where do
know.
we
Like,
go from
I
here?
feel like there's not much. Like, all you can really do is answer that question with a question, which is like, what do you want the studios to do? Like, I feel like it's so hard to figure out, and like, even with like the amount of bots that can be done to, like, and not that that's like consistent, but like there are certain campaigns that get so much attention that people do use some bots to kind of like flood things, and like it's really hard to mitigate. It's really hard to know. I've actually found a bunch of movies that I thought are like super hated online. Like, everyone in the Discord likes them. Every person I meet likes them, and I'm like, well, who hated this movie? And like,
Yeah,
obviously, there's amount of like percentage chance that that could just naturally happen. But I don't know. I just started like gauging a lot more heavily on like what I'm hearing in person and like hanging out with people, and like the Discord's been great for that to kind of get actual people's, regardless of where it's landing on the spectrum, you can kind of figure out like, was this majority hated, was this majority liked? Like, I feel like Blonde got this huge outpour of hate, and then the more I dug into it, like a lot of like film lovers I know were actually leaning more to positive, like not all of them, but we're leaning more to positive, and it was a lot of like random super stands that were the ones who were hating it. So like, I feel like the angry ones will always be the loudest, which makes it
absolutely.
almost impossible to actually like, again, I don't even know, like
Well, you can't
manage,
avoid
like,
them.
what are you
It's
trying to do
just
to the toxic fandom?
well, yeah, you're not. Well, listen, like, yeah, there's always going to be toxic people. I'm a Smash Bros. Fan. I know there's always going to be toxic people. And you just got to find a way to brush, not necessarily brush past that, but take it with a grain of salt and dig out the comments that are genuinely trying to help. Because deep down, there are people that want to do that. And sometimes they have a really strange way of showing it. Sometimes they're too subtle in their approach. And I think that's the only way you can really grow as a creator and an artist. My Dungeons and Dragons games would suck ass if I didn't get player feedback. Some of it hurt, but some of it was genuine. My storytelling in general, like short stories I make on the side and stuff I do, again, for role-playing games, wouldn't be
And
anywhere
I'm not.
near as good without feedback.
I've heard that storytelling is really like a skill, and it's something that you kind of share. And so I think it's important that it is something that you continuously work on and gain feedback. You want to be looking for feedback, and you want to be open to criticism, but as long as it's constructive, right?
Exactly.
You also don't want to get into like a negative feedback loop where you're all self-defeating and whatnot. But you want to, you know,
Yeah, but if I post something, I'm pissed off at Disney, so I go on and I say, yo, fuck you, Disney, and I'm just angry. But I am also somebody who normally can make really good points. If they see that in the algorithm and say, this guy shit posted, is he possibly just a bot because he didn't make any valid criticism? Like, then who gets swept in? You know what I mean? Like, that's the bigger thing for me. It's like, by all means, that, we want to try and mitigate it, and you want to try and ignore what you can, but then doesn't it like verge very close to the line of like choosing the reactions you want, like only going for
Well, here's my counter
reactors
argument
who
to
like
that.
what you like, kind of vibe?
My counter argument is the world sucks. No matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, people are not going to like you. You could be Keanu fucking Reeves. You could be Mr. Rogers. And people will still find an excuse to hate you. And blocking off people like that on the internet is never going to change that. You have to find a way to just balance that out and look for the good in things. Look for the people that care about you and want your project to do better. And sometimes that can be hard to find, but other times, it'll it will come up at the right moments, and that'll make it more satisfying.
Yeah, but if we accept this level of toxicity that's currently happening, isn't it only going to get worse? Isn't that
People
maybe
are going
why
to
it's
find a
so
way to be
bad now?
toxic. People are always
Yeah,
going to find a way to be toxic.
Yeah, but that's like saying that, like,
but
oh
you're
well, we
breeding
should
your
just
ground.
ignore the problem's gonna never stop, so why
I-
bother? Like,
It's
it's
like,
you're basically just saying like, it's shit, it's all shit.
So blocking
like,
them
fuck
off
trying
is
to be
not
better,
good. So blocking them off on the internet is not going to encourage them more.
Yeah, but like
That will absolutely encourage them more to be bigger assholes.
but it's
Yeah,
about
but at
giving
least
it
there's
the ground, right?
consequences
People are
to their actions.
But they don't care about that. That's what I'm saying.
no, but it's about how
Where do you learn?
in the
actions have
public eye it all
consequences.
is, right? Like
Yeah.
if you just allow them, like it's the same thing that's happening with like Kanye saying all this shit about Nazis. Like people can just laugh at him for being whatever mentally unhealthy, but like it's actually making it normalized to talk about Nazis for all these people that like Nazis. So it is like you're creating a place for them to be more toxic by not doing anything. To Tad's point, I think.
Well,
Is like at what
I don't
point
know.
do we have to kind of say like this isn't okay, and then like because sometimes you just have to speak up and say like guy just stop being so toxic, or else it's
But
just gonna snowball, right?
if you tell a bully at school to stop bullying you, 9 times out of 10 they're not going to stop bullying you.
Yeah, but if you tell them to look at their life and what led them to become a bully, they might actually you know what I mean?
Well,
Like
yeah,
it's,
that's
Or even
true.
you don't
if
have
you
to
just
be
fight
so
back.
yeah, it's not about fighting
90%
back.
of bullies, 90% of
Okay.
bullies, like they will stop bullying you if you punch them in the nose.
Or
because
they'll
there's
stop bullying you if you
actions
don't
to
give them
want-
attention. They'll stop bullying you if you
Yes,
don't give
that's
them
it.
attention too. Like
I
they'll
guess
just
that's
get
when they
bored.
learn their actions have consequences.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the bigger thing. But you're saying that you should just let all these actions not have
I'm not
consequences.
saying that you should let all the actions have consequences, but I'm
Take it
saying
on
you
the head,
shouldn't.
is what you said.
Yeah, exactly. I'm saying you shouldn't block everything out. Like Devin said, like the
So
creative
where's
process.
your line though? That's what we're talking about. So
I-
you said block everything. So where is the
Well,
line? for
I'm
blocking,
saying
right?
like don't block
That's the-
everything, which is what some people want to do. I feel like some people have this mentality that like everybody's negative towards me because they're bigoted, because they're assholes, because they're mean. But that's somewhat true, but that's not entirely true. Is what I'm trying to say.
It's a gray zone. That's what I was saying before about like
Yeah.
you know, like
So
how
you
I
should
can be
approach it
sued
as
for
such.
one angry comment, right? Like then you're getting into this like weird hyper woke, like everything's canceled right away because you got to take out the
Exactly.
things that are beyond. But that's what I'm saying. Like you're saying everything. Like there
Well,
needs
I'm
to be a
saying
line
you
to define
shouldn't block
what
everything.
pushes.
Yeah,
Yeah, but like things are worth blocking in that regard.
Yeah. At some point, you just got to say this guy's a lost cause. Block. Like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that too. Yeah, block or just move on from him. You see him in the comment section, just be like, oh, fuck off. Like, just scroll by. Like, this guy's not gonna have anything.
Here's the
Yeah,
thing.
but why not speak up?
No,
If we don't
here's the
say
thing,
something.
Ian. Here's the thing. When you do nothing, it enables them to keep doing what they do.
No, if you give them attention, that will enable them to keep doing what they do. They
It's
thrive
not
on that
attention to
attention.
say you have something wrong. You need to
But
look at your
do you
life.
know what a
That's not
troll
attention.
is? Do you know what an internet
but
troll
I know
is?
what a troll
We're not
is.
talking
That's
about
what
trolls.
90% of those guys
I'm not
are.
talking about trolls.
One
I'm
at a
not talking
time.
about trolls.
90%.
I'm talking about the people who are
Let-
like legitimately bigoted, who legitimately have these reasons in their heads why they like hate Jewish people or hate fucking women or hate whatever their thing is.
Prerogative.
Like
I hate blank.
Yes,
I hate
there should
insert,
be no
yeah.
tolerance towards that because the minute you
absolutely.
tolerate, the minute you say, I'll let him have that platform and I'll let him say those things.
He's always
is
going to
the
have a
minute
platform
that
to stand on the internet. If people block him off, they'll find another way.
Everyone has the right to free speech, so the idiots can oust themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone has the right to free speech. That doesn't mean you have to listen to them. That doesn't mean you have to give them the time
I think
of
freedom
day.
of speech does not equal freedom of consequences. And if you are a bigoted, then you should 100%. Then, if you get blocked because you're a bigoted, congratulations. That's what happens. Like, the internet has changed the world in many ways. And one of the problems that it's changed is that now people don't have consequences to their actions.
Oh, agreed.
Like
100%.
100% of these people that come on here and say like racist things on like about like the new Star Wars movie or whatever.
Little Mermaid.
Insert the movie.
They wouldn't actually say these things in public. Most of these people would 100% not go up to like the actress who played Rose and say like, oh man, like fuck you. You ruined The Last
You
Jedi.
deserve to
These
die.
are not like. No, go ahead.
Anyway,
go ahead,
I
Devin.
posted a quote in the live feedback that might be fitting for this conversation. I'm just curious what you guys thought of this. It says, this is from John Carteau. He says, listen carefully to the first criticisms made of your work. Note just what it is about your work that critics don't like. Then cultivate it. That's the only part of your work that's individual and worth keeping.
I respect that. I 100% agree. Yeah, like I said, like you don't.
Unless they hated that Nazi
But
flag.
like you could,
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. There's a
there's
line. There's a line. Like stuff like that. Yeah, maybe probably shouldn't make
That's
it.
my bigger point. I think we're just talking about
Can
bigger
we
things that
argue that
do get gray.
Disney's doing this on a corporate level?
Oh, exactly. Well, they're
Yeah,
doing
I
it
think
on a yes or no, a black or white level, which is not how you should look at something. The world's a
Well,
lot
if
more
anything,
complicated
I
than
do
that.
think that like Disney,
Sorry.
at least in recent years, has gotten a lot better when it comes to handling these toxic fans. Like at the very least, like fucking Obi-Wan Kenobi, say what you will, they at least warned the actress like, hey, just so you know, you're gonna get a lot of shit from people that fucking hate you just because you're black and you're a woman and you're playing a character in this show. But they'll also be like, they'll also have like Ewan McGregor come out and say like, no, this should not be tolerated. Fuck these
Please
people
don't be a
who
dick.
are not
Yeah.
real Star Wars fans. Like,
yeah, that's true. Yeah, exactly.
No,
That's
that's not-
just it. Like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of people mad at you, but you shouldn't let that get in the way. Like, that's a good mentality to have.
It's
like-
just maintaining that Mickey Mouse mask, man.
That too. That
It's more
yeah.
on Ian McGregor to step up, I bet, than it was on Disney.
Oh yeah, it was 100%
saying.
like Ian
True.
McGregor just being like, "Can you guys stop for like 5 minutes? I just cleaned up this mess. Can you keep it clean for 5 minutes, please?" It's an Incredibles reference for 5 of you.
I got it.
Hey, you got it. You got the reference.
I
I've
understood
never seen
that
The Incredibles.
reference.
Well, it's a complicated
I've seen
subject
the second
matter.
one, but not the first one.
It's a complicated
I was,
topic, and that's the best
yeah,
way to put it.
That's what I was trying to cite earlier. Was Syndrome's whole thing? If everyone's super, then no one is. If every corporation is evil, then none of them are.
That's different for superpowers. I think
that's
it's still
different.
evil.
Good way to weave that in, though.
Well,
Give respect.
Yeah.
Evil corporations are still evil, even if they all are evil.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
If
I
everybody kicks a baby, it's fine, right?
Yeah.
Like, no, they still kick babies. Okay, I'm standing in the fucking sand.
Don't kick the
Trying to
baby.
Oh man, right back to
I wouldn't
the
kick the
South
baby,
Park.
but would you do what what parents did in Russia, where they put babies out in the winter just to get them used to the cold?
Yo, that's fucked up. But like, did you know that like in Sweden, they're like people
Let me
just
top
like
that.
actually people just like leave their babies in like the street, because like
What?
they
That
actually have
seems
like
awesome.
baby parking spaces where like you park your stroller, you go into the mall, you do your thing, and then you come back and like, hey, there's my baby. Like,
Wow.
this is a fucking thing. I saw it on a
That's-
daily dose of internet, and I
How-
was just like, what?
How did
Wow.
we get here?
Yeah, how did we go from
Yeah,
Disney to how other countries treat their babies? This is going a little too political for my liking.
Yeah, we've
Um,
kind of gotten off topic.
I mean,
Maybe
we're
we
just
should
like
get
Disney,
back
yeah.
on topic.
I mean,
Yeah.
the only real thing I have left, because I should be getting off in like about 5 minutes, but a final little thing, because we touched on everything else, but like the one last point I think won't take too long. How much longer does the superhero movie genre have? Because like everyone loves to
Ooh.
compare it to the westerns and its popularity, but like westerns kind of had a dip and then had a renaissance and had a revisionist stage. Like they went through a lot. I don't know if superhero movies are as flexible because of how much written stuff it was based on, to that regard, just leaning on adaptation. And once you adapt so much, like we've already gotten into the really weird stuff, and I think some people are starting to be like, oh, it's like the comics, I'm signing out. So like, how much longer do we really have?
I don't think it's going to be much longer. Like, I think
I
there's a
think we
resurgence
got
of
another
other
couple
genres.
years out of it.
Yeah.
One
but-
at a time, one at a time.
No, he's
Yeah,
right.
sorry. No, I think we got another couple years out of it. I think the superhero genre is a little bit more flexible than the Western, into the fact that like most superhero movies are like another genre in of itself. Like Captain America Winter Soldier is a superhero movie, but it's also a political thriller.
Yeah, that was late
Like-
stage Western.
That's like
Like,
revisionist.
I mean, that was
yeah.
the revisionist Western. So like, it's almost like they skipped the whole Renaissance. And
They
just
skipped the
went straight
parody.
from- Yeah, exactly.
No, we had the parody.
There was a
Well,
little bit.
Deadpool a little bit,
Deadpool
but
was
besides
pretty
that was
much the
it.
parody.
But
That
compared
was
to the
it.
comics and like how long that happened in the comic
Yeah,
world,
compare
of,
that to
like-
how many Western parodies there were.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
not even close. Like, I don't think it
No,
has much
that's true.
longer. I think the horror genre is having a resurgence. Like, the
Horror's
horror
doing
genre is
good.
doing really well
The horror
lately.
genre is doing great.
Like,
I mean,
Nope. Nope
the
has
end
made
of
a
it.
ton of money. Barbarian was really successful.
Funny
Bodies,
enough,
Bodies,
I think
Bodies
the
had a
who
good
done it
release.
genre is actually kind of going through a renaissance right
That
now.
too, yeah.
Yep.
See How They Run was pretty successful, I think. If I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
See How They Run. See How They Run was pretty
Kenneth
successful.
Branagh's
The
been
Knives
doing
Out,
the
Glass Onion.
Oh,
he's
Death
been
on
bringing
Denial.
back the Agatha Christie's. Is that her?
I
Right?
mean, we don't have to
Yeah,
talk
no.
about Kenneth Branagh
No, we don't
destroying
have to
Nick
get
for
into it.
Christie.
I'm just saying, like, it's still in the zeitgeist. He's been making them, and
But-
He's
you
gonna
know, the
do a third
whodunits
one, apparently.
back.
But
Yeah.
my point is, like, other genres are coming back, and people are more interested in said genres coming back. And I think
Yeah.
superhero genres, I don't think there's, unless they really, really, really get their shit together and step up their game. Across the Spider-Verse might save it for a little while, but I think that's the last spark they're going to have, honestly. Guardians of the Galaxy 3, yeah, you could argue that too, but that's a conclusion. And people
Yeah,
are
I
going to
think-
accept it as a conclusion. And nothing more.
You can
I'm
feel the
kind
fame
of curious
going
to
out.
see what they do with the whole Kang Dynasty thing.
It's gonna be a while though, man.
Yeah,
Like,
that'll
that's
be
the
a
thing.
while. I would not be surprised if Kang Dynasty is like the big finale though, where it's just like we're done, we can't make any more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's, I can't feel you, to be
The
honest.
return on investment starts dwindling because, like,
Yeah.
It already
look at
is.
Exactly.
I mean, I do like Thor the movie, the fourth Thor, but I cannot fucking believe that the movie I saw cost $250 million.
Compare that to Dune.
Endgame.
Yeah, compare
Yeah.
that to Dune that had 150 million put behind it in comparison.
It just
It's
doesn't
night
look
and
up
day.
to it, and
Yeah.
like, again, I like the movie, but it reeks of shooting on a volume and not knowing how to use the volume quite right yet.
Exactly. And the Batman also had like a much lower budget. And yeah, I guess you could argue that might save the superhero genre for a bit. That's already had 2 confirmed sequels, so maybe DC will keep it alive. But in terms of like Disney Marvel movies in particular, I don't think it has much longer.
I don't think they're gonna go away, but they're definitely gonna dwindle after a while.
Yeah, it'll just be occasional interest. Like, oh, that's kind
Which
of
is
like
really how it should be. Like, I'm kind of getting
Really,
sick
yeah.
of the whole like 3 or 4 superhero movies a year
yes,
kind of
thank
thing.
you.
I much preferred it when it was just like, oh no, like we had a super movie like at the beginning of the year, super movie at the end of the year, and like that was it.
That was
Like,
nice. Yeah.
and
It's
from what
kind
I'm
of like
hearing, I
how the
think-
horror genre was to an extent. Like for like
Yeah.
the early 2010s, it was like, oh, there's shit films in January and kind of good films in October, and that's it. But now it's like there's stuff in March, there's stuff in June, there's stuff in October with Barbarian, there's stuff like Nope came out in September. Like it's crazy, like how
Well,
successful
this
horror
actually-
genre is right now.
This kind of wraps up everything really good because I think we're kind of seeing like the weeds growing out of the cracks in the concrete right now. I think this whole Disney kind of trying to shoot the theater flow in the foot, kind of, everything we've talked about in the conspiracy area of that. Like, I feel like that all leads to these really low movies that have really low risk of theater runs. Like, look at Terrifier 2. It may like versus the quality, whatever. I don't know. I know Steve doesn't like it. I'm also echoing Ted. But like, I feel like it made like, what is it, like 10 million off a $250,000 budget?
Yeah,
So
it was
like,
surprisingly successful.
you're seeing like huge return on investments for maybe not the craziest stay, but it's beginning this like growth of like, oh, that seems way more viable to a studio than these gigantic $1 million risks
That just ended up
that, like,
flopping.
yeah, and
Yeah.
sometimes only just breaking even. Like, look how fantastic Blade Runner 2049 is. It did everything it could have, except have a shorter runtime, and it just flopped. You know what I mean? In terms of box office. So like, it's not always 1-to-1, but I just feel like we're seeing quality start to get the attraction again, not just this
Quality, is going to different genres lately by the looks of it.
Yeah,
And also, I forgot to mention X and Pearl. Like, those
Yeah.
films as well. Also pretty successful. Pearl, I think, made less money. Yeah, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies did well, even though it was awfully advertised like every A24
Yeah.
movie. Big time. But, yeah, like, I'm surprised by how many horror films might just make my top 10 list this year. Just putting that out there. Like, I am shocked. I normally hate the horror genre, but the horror genre did pretty well this year.
and I'm sad. I feel
Not
like
gonna lie.
I've personally missed out a lot this year. I don't know why I was slacking so much. I think it was just
You
stuff
had a
with the kid
baby,
coming.
man.
Yeah,
You're
I
busy.
know, but,
It's
like-
all good.
Yeah, but now that I have the baby, I'm like, fuck, I should have been spending all this time before the baby at the theater because now I have to get a sitter to go to the theater,
It's
right? So
like-
it's this catch-22 of like, I thought I was taking it easy. I'm not really
You just
It's
get
like,
your
oh
mom.
man, I should have been watching more movies instead of being a responsible adult.
Well, what
Yeah,
was
how
I even
the-
doing? I was just fucking
You were
planning my own.
working on your
Whatever.
movie.
Yeah, I know. I just
Speaking
said
of
that. I
your
thought of that as
movie,
I said
Man,
that.
look at all the movies I could have watched if I wasn't being a good father.
Yeah.
Well, okay, the baby wasn't here yet. I was doing what I could.
well, you were being a good
No, you're
fiance
the role.
to a wife who's
Yeah,
pregnant.
sure. We'll let her field that one if she wants to. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's just a good wrap up because I really do feel like Disney had to stumble for us to get this brief little glimpse into some nice little original stuff doing well again. Because I think original was a very scary term for a lot. Also, yeah, I'm wrapping it up. If anybody has any final points. If
No,
not.
I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just feel like at a certain point, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And even if you do have a strong attachment to Disney, there's been enough in the last few years to open a lot of our eyes to the darker side of this industry. And I think
But
it's
don't
good to
worry,
be
they won't
reflective.
fail.
Yeah,
Don't worry, they won't fail because they're not supposed to.
exactly.
No, they'll fail, but I don't think they're gonna like. I definitely don't think Disney's gonna go anywhere.
They've
I don't
got a
think
safety
Disney's-
net, big time.
They've got a pretty big safety net. I think Disney's smart enough that like if they lose a shit ton of money, they'll be like, okay, like we'll go into like hibernation and like fucking save up a little bit and
That's
then
more
like
what I'm thinking.
do this
Yeah.
whole thing kind of over again. Like Disney is as a company has been around since the very beginning pretty much. And like I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I don't think like this is going to be the downfall of Disney. I don't think it's going to like collapse and like just fall apart from within. Like it's almost gotten to a point where it's too big to fail.
Oh,
Like,
those
Yeah.
are. I've never heard
Famous
that
last
be said
words.
before a fucking disaster before. Yeah,
Foreshadowing.
exactly. Foreshadowing. No, and like I totally agree in certain aspects because like they do have other things to lean back on. I think they might be coming to the death of theatrical Disney. I think there's enough other things that keep them profitable that if these gigantic risks become too much of risks, you could see some dumping of IP and some reconfiguring. I'm just taking some rough guesses. We don't know what's coming in the future. For all I know, I'm
I
going to
mean,
be
if
sipping out of a
anything,
Disney cup
Avatar
in
might
5
be
years.
like their biggest fucking
Fuck up.
fall up. Like if it doesn't make a shit ton of money and like yeah, like they've got a whole theme park based on that shit. Like if it's like
I forgot
fuck.
Avatar is part of Disney now. Holy
Yeah.
shit. That's
Yeah, oh, we should have brought that up. Yeah.
And now they got to point at the friggin' failure that is the Avatar and say, oh, look, it was so successful and now it failed 12 years later. I guess that means original passion projects don't work anymore.
Even
Guess
though
I'm
the
not gonna
first
fund 'em."
Avatar beat Don't Worry Darling at the box office.
Yeah, that's so
Everyone
wild. When I was seeing the numbers it was doing, I was just baffled. But regardless, I'm just wrapping this up because I do have to get going tonight. But it's been awesome, guys. Thanks for joining me. I hope we didn't just smash the teeth of the mouse into the curb too hard. But you know, I think it's good to be reflexive on these giant companies that we support sometimes. And I want to be doing more of it with the bigger companies that I kind of simp for, as Tad said. But at the end of the day, I think it's been a fun panel. We'll be back next month. I don't think we have a topic decided yet as of now. So if anybody's listening to this back, throw them in the elevator pitch panel, and we'll see what pitches get bubble to the surface. And yeah, join us next time. Thanks so much for coming along. And back to you, Ian.
All right. Have a great night, guys. Just a couple announcements before we log off for good and I disconnect myself. Want to bring up next week's episode is a First Dates with Moire episode, my personal selection. Chilling Murder Mysteries. We'll be talking about Sidney Lumet's Murder on the Orient Express, not the awful Kenneth Branagh remake. We will also be talking about Christopher Nolan's Insomnia and Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight. I bet you're starting to see pictures. I'm very excited for that. And next week, I think Steven is doing a selection for 3 films out of a hat because that went so well last time. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes was such a good movie. I'm excited and terrified to see what fresh hell awaits us from those selections. And a few days before Christmas, we're doing a year in review. we're all gonna get together, watch Muppet Family Christmas on YouTube, and talk about this year in the podcast, some of our best and worst films we've talked about on this podcast this year, and maybe some of my best and worst films of the year will be announced on the live stream. Stay
buddy.
tuned
We're
for
gonna
that,
go over
guys.
like our best.
Also,
Yeah.
Also,
go
shameless
ahead, Darryl.
plug before we go. If you're around London on December 10th, we alluded to this earlier, never followed up. Door into Darkness, my
Woo!
second feature film, is screening at the Highland Cinema at 9:30 p.m. Come on out if you're around and come to the after party and shoot the shit with us after. Yeah, sorry about that, man. Back.
Party!
No worries. Have a great night, guys. From everybody over at First Ace of Moire, have a happy holidays, happy New Year, in case we don't catch you before the end of the year. Have a great night, guys. See you.
Yuck.